Hey everyone, Harold Fisher here, anchor and host of the Daily Drum on WHUR. Welcome to yet another edition of HUR at Home on WHUR and all of our social media platforms. And I want to wish everyone a happy new year. Tonight on HUR at Home, we're talking to Prince George's County State's Attorney, Aisha Braveboy. She is the chief prosecutor in Prince George's County. She's been in office for 2 years now. We're going to talk about that as well as some of the happenings over the past week or so. State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy, thanks for joining the conversation and joining us on HUR at Home.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And I appreciate, the smile and, the happy vibes. But unfortunately, as you know, we've had a tough week. Lots of eyes on Capitol Hill right now. And of course, Washington, D.C., just across the line from Prince George's County. From the perspective of your office, do you have any concerns in the county? And how is your office preparing for any unrest that could be coming next week?
Sure. Well, yes, we are obviously concerned. We are located right next door to the nation's capital, maybe 15, 20 minutes from the capital, some parts of our county are. So we certainly know that any concerns in DC can be concerns here, but the reality is the insurrectionists, these treasonous thugs who attacked our capital, attacked our democracy last week, they're not just focused on Washington, D.C. They're focused all around the country. And so we can't pretend like we are immune from an attack here in Maryland or even in our county. So we're doing our best to prepare ourselves. I know that our police department is preparing, and we are doing all of our research because if individuals need to be prosecuted here in Prince George's County, they will be.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because obviously, racial concerns are at a new high. Issues about trust in the police, the judicial system among African Americans is questionable. You may have heard that there's been a Prince George's County police officer just today suspended for wearing his badge, his
service weapon,
but he had a political shirt, a Donald Trump shirt. Does that kind of thing concern you?
It absolutely concerns me. As you also probably know, our county has been sued. There's a federal lawsuit claiming discrimination that were brought by Black and brown officers here in the county. We have requested, we've not yet received, but we've requested an unredacted copy of the report that was done by the plaintiff's expert, because what we really want to do in our office is get to the truth. We want to ensure that every officer who we sponsor as witnesses are officers who we can stand behind. And unfortunately, because we don't have access to all of the information contained in that report so that we can do our due diligence to investigate, to determine whether or not there are individuals who we need to question a little bit more or inquire about a little bit more, it is very frustrating. But I hope that as a result of the events of last week and the incident that occurred today, that the county will realize that we have to uncover all forms of racism, even within our police department, especially within our police department, because we have to ensure that those who are patrolling our streets, who are charging our residents or people who come through our community, are people who operate with integrity. And right now, that can be questionable at times.
One of the things that is coming up this week, and this certainly has to be one of the darkest moments recently in the county, and that is going to be the sentencing of Sean Urbanski. He was convicted of the murder of Richard Collins III, a Bowie State graduate. He was also commissioned as a second lieutenant and never had a chance to realize that that honorable service as a U.S. Army officer. Sean Urbanski was not convicted of a hate crime, but he was convicted of murder. Your thoughts about that as we move towards that sentencing this week?
Sure. Well, the lead charge in the case was first-degree murder. So I want to make sure that all of the listeners understand that first-degree murder was the lead charge. It is the charge that really allows us, the state, to ask for the maximum penalty, which is life without the possibility of parole. And so while we really did also believe and we know that he was motivated by hate, the way that the hate crime statute was written back before we changed the law, it was very narrow and it was almost impossible to use and had rarely been used in the state. And so the judge determined that the state did not prove our burden of showing that hate was the only factor in the commission of the crime. And usually with crimes, there are mixed motives. So you can't say for a certainty that that was the only thing in a person's head, but we do believe that he was strongly motivated by hate. And so the new legislation that we passed corrected that in the law so that future prosecutions involving hate will be able to be prosecuted fully. But I want to make sure that the listeners know that because we did secure a first-degree murder conviction, we can ask for the maximum penalty.
Let me drill down a little bit on that, because you said something that struck me. You said prosecuted fully. Had Sean Urbanski, in your opinion, been convicted of a hate crime, what difference would it have made?
Well, it would not have made a difference in terms of sentencing because we can ask, because we got the first degree murder conviction, we can actually ask for the maximum penalty. But let's say the jury had came back with a second degree murder conviction. At the time that this crime was committed, second degree murder had a maximum penalty of 30 years. What a hate crime would have done was tacked an additional 20 years on to the 30 years that we could have asked for the second degree murder. Because we got first degree murder, that carries life, that charge carries life, and we can ask for the maximum penalty, which is life without the possibility of parole. And so while we believe it was a hate crime, it was charged that way, it was prosecuted that way, but the judge really at the 11th hour dismissed the hate crime charge, so the jury never got to decide on that. We won't ever know the outcome, but we felt like we put on a strong case showing hate and showing that it was strongly motivated by hate. But again, it does not affect what we're able to ask for, but it would have impacted us had we only gotten a second degree murder conviction.
One other question about this. What's going to happen on Thursday in court for those who are not familiar with the process?
Sure. So we're going to have a sentencing hearing. At that hearing, the defendant and his supporters will have an opportunity to speak. The next of kin, which we plan, obviously, for the parents to speak at that hearing as well. The state, which will be represented by two of my prosecutors, my principal deputy, Jason Abbott, who was the lead prosecutor on that case, as well as Jonathan Church, who is my chief of homicide, who also prosecuted that case. They will be asking on behalf of the state for a certain sentence. We will be providing information and evidence on why we believe that the judge should impose a certain sentence, and the family will speak on their loss, their devastation, and how difficult it has been over the last few years for them to, really live without this amazing young man. Not only was he a second lieutenant at the time, he was posthumously promoted to first lieutenant. So he is now referred to as First Lieutenant Richard Collins III. But he was a wonderful son. He was a great friend to so many, a great family member. He was someone people could count on. And so the world just lost just a tremendous young man. And we are going to honor him on Thursday as we indicate why the judge should impose the maximum penalty.
You've been in office for 2 years, and there's a laundry list of achievements that you can tout. Talk to me about, outside of the hate crime law, we've discussed that, the thing that you are most proud of.
Well, let me say, there's so many things, but but if I'm to be honest, the thing I'm most proud of is how well my team has worked together. I have over 200 people who work for me, over 100 attorneys, and the rest are support staff. And we have faced a tremendous challenge with the pandemic. And we had to go from having an operation where we're in the courthouse every single day, servicing our victims and our cases, to really being remote, everyone at home for the most part. And especially at the beginning of the pandemic, everyone was at home. And so we had to transition from being an office where everything was done within that office to having a remote telework, environment. And we moved through that so smoothly. And we took everyone's thoughts into consideration. We had meetings with our senior leadership. They met with their frontline staff so that we ensured that we had all of the equipment we needed so that people could operate at home, and that people were committed to continuing the work of our office, and everyone did it. And it's so amazing that we were able to continue to work really hard for people, because you had victims who had to have their day in court pushed off because we couldn't have trials. And then on the other hand, you had defendants who had also have a right to have their day in court, but they weren't able to because of the pandemic. Some had to be held in jail because of the nature of the crimes that they committed and the potential danger they posed to our community. But others were able to be, released into our community. And we worked every single week to review all of the inmates to determine which individuals we thought could be released safely in our community. And that was a labor of love, because it was, going through, if you can imagine, going through 700, 800 cases every single week just to make sure that we weren't overlooking someone who could be released safely, and individuals who may have had health problems or other issues that we needed to really consider. So, it was, again, a labor of love, and all of my team members really pulled together to make it happen. And so I'm so proud of them. I'm so proud to be their leader.
I would argue certainly that is impactful. And part of that would be considered, some inside baseball. Certainly we've all had to shift.
Yeah,
I'm at home right now, but I would argue that maybe one of the things that has been most impactful, and in some ways even most dramatic, is this strangulation protocol into domestic violence. That is a big deal. And Prince George's County in years past, there's been, and this was even before you came into office, that deadly domestic violence numbers were just horrific several years ago. And I think that this could very well go a long way to dealing with better prosecutions of these kinds of crimes.
Oh, you know what? Absolutely. Last year in the General Assembly, we pushed for legislation that would make strangulation a first-degree felony assault. And we were successful. It was the first year that our office really got behind it. And this legislation had been attempted for almost a decade, but we really worked hard and we got that legislation passed. But not only did we get that legislation passed, we began to develop this strangulation protocol within our county. And so we trained all of the different law enforcement agencies that come into contact with victims. We worked very closely with Prince George's Hospital. And I want to give a shout out to our healthcare practitioners. They're amazing frontline workers. We love them. And so we now have a protocol where if someone indicates that they have been strangled or choked, that individual is taken immediately to Prince George's Hospital for an evaluation, because it is critical that we collect evidence as soon as possible, showing maybe blood pooling or broken cartilage or other indications of strangulation. And Prince George's Hospital actually has a piece of equipment that can do that type of forensic examination. So we are very lucky that we have such great partners, and all of our folks from 911, when an individual calls 911, if they indicate that that there was strangulation or choking, that information is passed on to whomever is responding, whether it's the police department or the sheriff's department, and then they can take it from there. And that has been very helpful in putting together our cases. And there are cases that we are going to be prosecuting in the future that are a result of this protocol, and we believe that we'll be very well prepared for those cases. So we're really excited about that, and it is groundbreaking work that we're doing.
I want to wrap up with this question. What do you want to do that you haven't been able to do over the past 2 years?
So my new initiative, Mr. Fisher, and I hope that I'll be able to come back next year and really talk more fully about it. But we have begun to develop what's called our Emerging Adult Program. And this really is a program for individuals who are 18 through 26 who come into contact with the criminal justice system. Some have relatively minor offenses, some have more serious offenses. But what we know is that age group, those individuals are likely, even if they spend a period of time incarcerated, they're coming home. And so we want to make sure that we are preparing them for success. So we have partnered with a couple of our nonprofits as well as our union community. I want to give a shout out to labor. They are amazing, as well as our business community, so that we can take individuals who've committed offenses. We can provide mentors, we can provide counseling, whether they are incarcerated or they're in the community serving their time. And then we can prepare them with appropriate job skills and then find them employment. So that is the path we want. We believe we can look at reducing the amount of time we might ask for certain types of offenses if an individual does agree to complete this type of program. Because what we know is, and what we see is, individuals who are committing crimes over and over and over again, they're getting short periods of time in prison or in jail, but they're not developing any skills to be successful in the future. And so we think that this type of initiative will, number one, make a difference in their lives, but it'll also keep our community safer because they won't be committing crimes over and over and over again. So we're really excited about it. We would be the first county in the state to develop such a program, but we're used to being first in a lot of things, just like I was first to have an initiative where we review sentences of juvenile lifers, and we've had 9 so far that have been released through our efforts. And so we're really excited to be on this forefront of reducing mass incarceration, but with effective, smart strategies that will still ensure the safety of our communities.
Prince George's County State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy, thank you so much for talking to us. I really appreciate it. A happy New Year to you. And
Happy New Year.
All right. That is it for this edition of HUR at Home. I'm Harold Fisher. And as always, I'll see you